Clara Hensley hadn't planned to stop. She didn't need bread, didn't need nails, didn't need anything really, not anymore. But something in the way the wind turned west low and mean like a warning whispered through the pines made her pull the reins and steer the mare toward town. The square rose from dust like a scar, crooked buildings, smoke curling from a lazy forge and too much silence for midday. Something was wrong. Then she saw them. 3 boys' sacks tied over their heads like burlap masks, rope twisted cruelly behind their backs. They stood next to a wooden sign, hand-painted letters slashed across the grain. Orphans, $3 apiece, no names, no questions. What do you think of Clara's unexpected decision? Like and comment below to share your thoughts. Clara Hensley stepped down from her wagon boots, hitting dirt like gunfire. A cold hush settled. Her presence, long treated like a shadow, was suddenly unmistakable. The widow, always dressed in black, never stayed for prayer or gossip. 8 years alone had made her easy to ignore. But now every head turned, not because she looked strange, but because her eyes did. The auctioneer, a red-faced man in a torn vest and threadbare suspenders, cleared his throat. "Ma'am, you here for one?" She didn't answer. The tallest boy, maybe 12, swayed, slightly knees buckling, but he held himself upright. The other 2 didn't move, one smaller, barely standing height to her hip. Wind stirred the dust, the kind that crawled into your teeth and settled like bad memory. $3 each, the man said, again scratching at his neck like the guilt had crawled beneath his skin. Farmer North might take one for sheep herding, but they're not broken. Don't speak much. Haven't eaten since dawn. Seller says keep the sacks on, keep 'em quiet. Still nothing from Clara. The man chuckled nervously. Could be mute. Could be worse. You don't know what you're buying is all I'm saying. Clara opened her coat. $6 silver, one scrap of folded paper that smelled faintly of lavender and long winters. She placed them in the man's palm, her eyes never leaving the smallest boy. "All 3, she said. He blinked. "Pardon, untie them." The crowd murmured, boots shifting against dry earth, the clink of a harness somewhere in the distance. The man hesitated, then mumbled and stepped forward. One by one he cut the ropes. The burlap masks dropped to the ground. The eldest had pale blue eyes too wide for his hollow cheeks. His jaw clenched, but he didn't flinch. The middle boy, bruised under one eye, a scab on his lip, kept glancing around like faces were knives. The youngest, no more than 6, looked straight at Clara and whispered, "Mrs. Hensley." Not loud, not scared, just certain. The crowd shifted again. A woman muttered, "How does he know her?" Clara didn't answer. She stepped forward, placed a hand gently on the youngest boy's shoulder, then the middle one, then the eldest. "Come with me," the auctioneer called after her. "You don't even know their names," but she didn't stop. She didn't need names. She just needed them to live. What would you do in Clara's shoes? Drop a like and comment to let us know. They rode out in silence, the wagon creaking under weight, more soul than body. The boys sat in the back, arms wrapped around their knees, faces unreadable. Clara didn't ask questions, didn't offer bread or water. Not yet. Kindness offered too quick could scare the ones who'd been hurt the worst. Her house sat on the edge of the valley where the pines grew tall and the creek ran fast wild. The barn leaned like an old man in prayer. The fields were all memory and seed, but the house still stood. It was hers. When they arrived, the boys didn't move. Not at first. "Inside," she said. The eldest jumped down first, helped the others without being told. They followed her across the porch like shadows unsure of their weight. The door opened to the scent of old pine and still warm iron from the stove. She set a kettle on, opened a cupboard, pulled down flour and beans. "Sit," she said. And they did. The batter sizzled on the skillet as Clara stirred, one eye on the stove, the other on the boys. They sat rigid at the table, arms pressed tight to their sides, like they expected the floor to open and swallow them whole. "What's your name?" she asked the smallest. He hesitated, then softly, "Theo." She nodded. "And yours?" The boy with the bruised lip looked down. "Nolan." The eldest waited, then spoke like it was a dare. "Elliot." She flipped the pancake, slid it onto a plate. "I'm Clara," she said. "You said my name, Theo." "How?" The youngest shrugged. "Just knew it. Did someone tell you no? Have we met before?" He shook his head. "Then how?" He stared at her, his voice a thread. "I heard it when I was sleeping. A lady said it, said you'd come." Clara didn't move. The batter hissed. Elliot stiffened. Nolan's eyes flicked to the floor. Theo added, "She was kind, warm, like you." The room fell silent. Then Elliot stood. "If you're gonna hurt us," he said, voice flat, "do it quick. Don't drag it out." Clara turned, brow creased. "I won't hurt you. They all say that." Well, she said, "I won't say it again." She fed them. They ate like wolves, no words, just scraping forks and clenched jaws. When the plates were empty, she laid out blankets near the hearth, brought clean clothes from a cedar chest. "You sleep here tonight," she said. "If you run, I won't come after you. But I'll leave the lantern on till morning." She started for the stairs, then paused. "Tomorrow we talk about what comes next." But no one slept. Not really. Theo curled up close to the fire, thumb pressed just near his lip, not quite sucking, just needing something to hold the dark off. Nolan lay flat, hands over his chest like someone expecting to be dragged out by the collar. Elliot sat upright in the far corner, arms around his knees, watching the door. When dawn came, it did so slowly behind a curtain of low clouds and frost. Clara was already up, already at the stove, sleeves rolled. She didn't ask who was hungry, she knew. Didn't ask who was dirty, that was plain. She poured water into a basin, set out soap, a fresh stack of shirts and trousers. "You can wash in the barn. There's privacy there. Elliot, you first, then Nolan. Theo last. Don't come back in until you're clean." They didn't move. Elliot's jaw worked. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I want to. People don't do things just to be kind." She met his eyes. "That's because people forget how much kindness can cost." He didn't answer, but a minute later he stood, took the clothes, walked out without another word. By the time Nolan followed, Clara was slicing apples into the oats, adding cinnamon she'd been saving for a winter that felt too long. Theo lingered. "Can I keep my name?" he asked. She turned. "Why wouldn't you?" "Sometimes people change them when they take you in." "I won't." "Good," he whispered. "I think God gave it to me." Her chest trembled faintly. "You warm enough?" He nodded. "Go on then." He trotted barefoot across the boards and out into the gray morning. They returned one by one, cleaner, quieter, not quite sure how to be inside this new space. Elliot's hair was still wet. His shirt hung loose over his thin frame. He stood near the table, not sitting, just watching. "I'll do chores," he said. "You don't need to. I want to. That changed things." She led him out to the old coop, the tool shed, the garden overrun with weeds. He didn't ask questions, just nodded, got to work. Inside, Nolan stacked firewood, methodical and careful. Theo helped her fold linens, humming a tune under his breath, an old hymn, broken in places but full of something more whole than anyone had felt in a long while. That night, the lantern stayed lit, the fire burned warm, and when Clara stepped outside to check the latch on the barn, she paused. The wind had shifted again, but this time it wasn't a warning. It was a welcome. "How do you feel about the boys starting to trust Clara like, and share your thoughts in the comments?" The first sound of the morning wasn't the rooster. It was the hush of breathing, slow, steady, and close. Theo had fallen asleep curled beneath Clara's shawl, still clutching a wooden spoon like a toy. Elliot sat by the hearth, feeding kindling to the fire, his movements careful, practiced. "Water's hot," he said when Clara entered. "You're up early. Didn't sleep much." He didn't explain and she didn't ask. She just nodded and poured tea. Nolan came next, rubbing his eyes, silent as usual. He took a cup without a word, then sat in the corner near the stacked wood and began sorting the pieces by size. "You always this quiet?" she asked gently. He shrugged. "Talking's for people who trust their words." She didn't press. That was enough. Later, as the sun slid higher, Elliot chopped wood behind the barn, shirt damp with sweat, eyes focused. He worked like someone trying to remember the shape of stillness. Every motion was sharp, efficient, like it meant something more. "You don't have to wear yourself out," Clara said, leaning on the porch rail. "I like it when my arms hurt," Elliot replied, not looking up. "Keeps my head quiet." He swung again. Crack. Inside, Nolan read to Theo from a dog-eared Bible. The words tripped and stumbled, but Theo clapped anyway. Sometimes he giggled when Nolan got stuck. At one point, Nolan slammed the book shut and muttered, "You read it then." Theo just smiled. "I will. Someday." That night, the scream tore through the house like a gunshot. Clara sat bolt upright, her heart pounding. Then it came again, raw wild animal. She rushed down the hall, bare feet slapping the cold floor. "Elliot!" He was thrashing under the blanket limbs, tangled sweat soaking the cot. Theo sat up, covering his ears. Nolan froze by the window. "Elliot," Clara called, but he didn't hear her. His eyes stayed shut, mouth open in a silent cry. "No more, please. No more." She crossed the room, dropped beside him, hands firm on his shoulders. "It's not real," she said. "You're safe. You're home." His eyes snapped open. He gasped one huge, ragged breath, then recoiled like she'd burned him. "Don't touch me," he shouted. "It's Clara," she said calmly. "You were dreaming." He looked around, panicked, his chest heaving. Theo was crying quietly now, face buried in his knees. "I thought I was back there," Elliot whispered. "The boots, the ropes, that man. I thought I'd never wake up." "You're awake," she said. "I scared him," he added, nodding toward Theo. Theo sniffed. "It's okay." Elliot covered his face. "Should I go sleep in the barn?" "No one's going to the barn," Clara said. "You're staying right here." Nolan stepped forward. "He does this sometimes," he said softly. "It's worse when he's tired." "I'll be quiet," Elliot muttered. "I swear I'll be quiet." Clara sat back on her heels. "You don't need to swear anything. But if you're up, come help me make tea. Now." In the kitchen, she lit the lantern, let each boy pick a mug. Theo chose the one with blue flowers. Nolan took the plain one. Clara handed Elliot a tin cup with a dented rim. They sipped in silence, steam curling into the dark. "Are nightmares like memories?" Theo asked. "They're what memories do when you try to forget too fast," Clara said. None of them replied, but something in the quiet settled. The next day, Elliot chopped wood without being told. Nolan helped in the garden, cautious, gentle, with roots and worms. Clara watched him kneel, cupping a seedling like it might break. "You ever have a family?" he asked. "I did." "Where are they gone?" He didn't press, just nodded. Inside, Theo swept the floors, then lined up the dust piles like tiny forts. He sang to himself under his breath. "This little light of mine," over and over, not even knowing she heard. Later that evening, after a dinner of oats and apples, Theo asked, "Do I have to sleep with the light on?" "Only if you want. Can I leave it on for Elliot?" Clara smiled. Of course. Elliot didn't say anything, but when he lay down, he didn't face the wall. He faced the fire, faced them, faced her. And that was enough for now. The knock came just after sundown. 3 short raps measured confident. Clara froze halfway to the pantry. Elliot stood near the hearth knife halfway into a block of wood. Nolan looked up from his book. Theo paused, spoon hovering in his mouth. Clara opened the door. Reverend Samuel Holt stood on the porch, tall and solemn in a black coat slick with rain. His hands were folded like in prayer even when he wasn't praying. "Evening, Clara," he said. She stepped outside, pulled the door shut behind her. "You're not here for tea." "No, ma'am. Word got around. About the boys. What word? That you bought 'em like cattle. That they knew your name. That maybe you'd lost your mind. Maybe I have." He looked at her long and slow. "They're not livestock, I know, but people fear what they don't understand, and those boys, they've been passed around more than most dogs. Elliot, he put a man in the infirmary once." "Did the man deserve it more than most?" She nodded. "Then we're done here. You want me to help make it official?" he asked, voice softer. "Names registered, papers filed. Not yet. Not until I know they'll stay." He looked past her at the house windows flickering with firelight, 3 shadows moving behind the glass. "I wouldn't count on that, not with their history." She looked him dead in the eye. "Then I'll make them a new one." He sighed. "You always were stubborn. I learned from the best." He tipped his hat. "Clara, I hope you know what you're doing. Taking in 1 boy is hard. 3. He paused. "That's a resurrection." She didn't answer, just turned and went back inside. Theo was peeking through the curtain. "Who was that?" he asked. "Just someone scared of what might happen." "He's scared for us." She looked at the 3 of them. "So am I." That night she pulled out an old Bible, placed it on the table. The boys watched her silent. "I used to read from this when I was your age. Sometimes it helped. Sometimes it didn't. But I thought maybe—" She opened it, her voice quiet, steady. "He setteth the solitary in families. He bringeth out those which are bound with chains." By the time she closed it, Theo was asleep on the bench, Nolan curled beneath a quilt. Elliot sat upright, but his eyes weren't on the door. They were on her. Morning brought blood in the snow. Just a trail, faint, broken, leading from the back steps into the tree. Clara followed it, heart tight in her throat. She found Elliot near the tree line, crouched beside a snare. A rabbit writhed nearby. Belly-torn, breath rattling. "I didn't mean to," Elliot said. She stepped closer. "I wanted to help. Breakfast, but I messed it up." She knelt, ended the rabbit's suffering, quick and quiet, wrapped it in cloth. "You'll need stitches," she said, looking at the cut across his palm. "I've had worse." "You won't again, not here." Back at the house, she cleaned and stitched the wound. Nolan and Theo watched silent. "I want to learn to trap right," Elliot said. "You will." "And shoot, why, so I can protect them." Clara met his eyes. "All right, but not today." He nodded. That night, Elliot lay, footing the room again. And for the first time since the boys had come, Clara slept without waking. But peace was short. 3 days later, a stranger rode into town. She was at the general store loading flour when Simon Reed leaned close and muttered, "Heard a man asking about the boys." Her blood went cold. What kind of man, fancy one? Wore spurs that never touched dirt. Said he had papers, said he was family. What name? Didn't give one. Rode off east, toward your place. She didn't pack the supplies, didn't even shut the door. She rode, hard. The wind howled and snow turned to slush beneath the mare's hooves. When she crested the final hill, the cabin came into view. And a horse was already there. Dark coat, heavy saddle. She ran. Inside, the boys stood lined up, silent, rigid. The man wore a long, dark coat, his mustache curled at the edges. In one hand, a folder. In the other, a sack. just like the ones they used to wear. "You must be the widow," he said, turning. "I've come for what's mine. They're not yours." He held up papers. "Ward transfer. Signed and sealed." "Signed by a dead judge," she said. "Forgery's a crime." "You paid for flesh," Elliot said, stepping forward. "Not family." The man smiled. "You think you're family now, boy?" Elliot didn't flinch. "We chose her." And when the man reached into his coat, Clara moved first. The rifle was already in her hands. "Try it," she said. He hesitated. "You won't shoot." "I'm scared," she said. "That doesn't mean I won't pull the trigger." He backed away. "You'll pay for this." "They already did," she said, "and they left them with me." It happened fast. Too fast. The man in the dark coat returned not alone this time, and not during the night but in the gray light of early morning when the snow still clung to branches and most hearts hadn't woken. Clara had ridden into town for supplies, left the boys repairing the chicken coop. She'd planned to be back by midday, but at the general store, Simon Reed caught her sleeve again. "Different man this time," he said. "Asking harder questions. What kind?" Said he was kin. Showed a badge, one I ain't seen before, slick with papers, but not right. Clara dropped the sack of oats. Which way east, like the last one, she rode harder than she had in years. The mare's breath came in clouds, hooves slicing through slush and mud. Wind bit sharp, but she didn't feel it. When the cabin came into view, her stomach turned. A strange horse was tied to the post. She jumped down before the wagon stopped. The door was open. Inside, the boys stood still, back straight, eyes locked. And the man this time, older, crueler, wore a smirk beneath a crooked hat. He held a folder in one hand. In the other, another damn sack. "Step away from them," Clara said. He turned slow, savoring the moment. "You must be the widow," he said. "We've heard about you." "I'm not hard to find," she said. "No, and neither are they." He stepped closer. "You can't keep them, ma'am. They were bought, paid for. They're not property. They're inventory." Elliot took a step forward. "Say that again," he said, voice low. "I dare you." The man chuckled. "Feral, just like they said." Nolan moved beside Elliot. Theo didn't cry, didn't run. He reached for Clara's hand. The man reached into his coat. She didn't wait. The rifle cracked like thunder. The bullet missed just barely, but the message didn't. He staggered back, eyes wide. "You'll pay for that," he growled. "They always say that," she replied. "But we're still here." He left, but not far. That night they didn't sleep. The boys huddled by the fire. Theo's hands shook. Nolan sharpened a stick into a spear. Elliot sat on the floor, gun across his lap. "They'll come back," he said. Clara nodded. "Then we'll be ready." "No," Elliot said. "Next time we don't wait." Next morning she went to town again, this time with all three boys, straight to the courthouse. Judge Harlan blinked at the forged papers she slammed on his desk. "These came from Judge Mercer," Clara said. Harlan frowned. "Mercer retired 3 years ago, then someone's forging court orders to steal children." Harlan went pale. "We'll look into this." "I don't want a promise," she said. "I want peace." He nodded. "You'll have it." But she knew better than to wait on peace. So she prepared for war. She unpacked her husband's revolver, cleaned it, loaded it. Showed Nolan how to brace his shoulders when aiming. Showed Elliot how to hold his breath before pulling the trigger. Taught Theo how to listen for footsteps on snow. Still it came when no one expected. 5 days later. She left at dusk alone, riding to a church-run homestead across the ridge, a place where people might still believe in right and wrong, where someone might help. But she never made it. By dawn, the boys found her mare dead, bleeding into the frost. No sign of her. Just a trail, a smear blood eastbound, into the hills. Elliot knelt beside the tracks, fingers in the dirt. She didn't go down easy. he said. But she's still alive. How do you know? Nolan asked. Elliot looked at Theo. Theo stared at the trail, eyes clear. Because I hear her. In the quiet. That was enough. They packed light. One rifle, one map, one prayer, and a promise. We're bringing her home, Elliot said. They moved before sunrise. Elliot led. Nolan watched the rear. Theo stayed between them, smaller, slower, but unafraid. The hills clawed their boots. Vines bit their legs. Wind screamed through the canyons. Then they saw it. A cabin slumped between rocks. Smoke bleeding from the chimney. A red scarf nailed to the post. Elliot drew the revolver. She's inside, Nolan nodded. Could be a trap. We go anyway. They crept through the snow, quiet as breath. The door was cracked. Elliot pushed it open. She was there, tied to the bed frame, eyes half-lidded, bruised but alive. I knew you'd come, she said. He was at her side, cutting the ropes, hands shaking. Did they hurt you? Not in the way they wanted. Nolan checked the window, 3 riders climbing fast. Elliot helped her stand. We run. They fled through the ravine behind the cabin, slid down stone and root. Gunfire cracked behind them. A bullet grazed a tree near Theo's head. They kept running. Clara gasped. Old mine, half a mile east. They reached it just as the storm hit, wind howling, snow blinding. The entrance yawned open like a grave. Inside they found shadows and rust tracks and broken lanterns, a place where light had died long ago, but they lit one anyway. Elliot positioned himself at a bend in the tunnel, handed Clara the gun. You shoot, he said. No questions. She nodded. Then he disappeared into the dark. The men entered minutes later, voices low, steps loud. Elliot waited, then struck. The first man went down without a sound. The second turned, gun raised, and Nolan tackled him. The third aimed for Theo and fell to a single shot. Clara stood at the tunnel mouth, gun still smoking. I didn't think I would, she said. You did, Elliot said, helping her lower it. The last man groaned, blood streaking his face. Please, he rasped. I was just doing a job. Clara leaned down, took his weapon. You tell whoever sent you if they come near my boys again, I won't miss next time. They left him, let him crawl back. They made it home just before dawn, weary, wounded, but whole. The winter passed slow, like a hymn drawn out over cold ground and long nights. But there was warmth in it too, a new kind of stillness, the kind that comes after fire when all that's left is what didn't burn. The boys settled into rhythm. Elliot repaired the second fence. Nolan learned to lay traps without cruelty. Theo started writing words on the cabin walls, chalk scrawls that said safe, warm, and most often home. Clara planted more rows, cabbage, onions, turnips, each one a defiance of what had tried to take them. Then one morning a rider came. Not a threat this time. A boy barely older than Elliot, slumped in the saddle boots, worn, thin eyes red from dust and lack of sleep. You, Clara Hensley, he asked. I am. He handed her a telegram. From Lydia. Said it was urgent. She opened the slip. Her fingers didn't shake, but the rest of her did. 3 boys taken. Southbound wagon. River crossing. Headed for auction. Need help. Lydia. She didn't ask how Lydia had found her. She didn't need to. She turned to Elliot. I'm going. No, he said, already reaching for his coat. We are. That night they packed light rations, rope, fire starter. Clara carried her husband's revolver. Elliot the rifle. Nolan brought flint and a stick of dynamite he'd been hiding since autumn. I was waiting for a good cause, he said simply. Theo stayed behind, too small for the road, but not too small to understand. He hugged Clara's waist, face buried in her coat. Come back, he whispered. I will. The trail to Porter's Mill was sharp and mean, steep switchbacks, snowbanks deep enough to drown a horse. But they pushed through, breath visible like ghost steam in the trees. By dusk they crested the ridge. Below, smoke rose from tents pitched in crooked rows. A holding pen sat near the creek, wrapped in barbed wire. Inside 3 boys, one too thin to stand, one with a sack still tied round his neck. Clara exhaled. We go in quiet. No, Nolan said. We go loud. He lifted his coat. The dynamite hung from his belt like a declaration. At midnight, Elliot said, and so they waited. When the hour came, Clara moved first, walking through the camp like she belonged, bold and quiet. No one stopped her. No one even looked twice. She reached the pen. One boy raised his head, reached out. She pressed a finger to his lips and cut the wire. On the far end, Nolan struck the fuse behind a stack of crates. The explosion shook the valley, not big but sharp enough to send guards scrambling enough to mask the sound of hoofbeats as Elliot came charging through the gate on horseback. Clara ran, with the boys behind her. They didn't look back. Not until dawn. Not until the ridge was behind them and the tree with white blossoms stood before them once again. They were safe. Again. But something had changed. 2 days later, Lydia arrived. He rode a mule and wore a hat that shadowed most of his face, but his voice was warm, deep with gravel and trust. "You got my message," he said. "I did." He handed Clara a small black ledger. "Names," he said, "ages, destinations, still more out there." She didn't blink. "Then we keep going." He nodded. "You and the boys, me," she said, "and anyone who wants to help." They shook on it, not like a business deal, but like an oath. The cabin became more than home. It became the Hensley light, a beacon for the lost. Words spread quiet at first, then steady. Boys came in 1s and 2s from farms, from halfway houses, from wagons they escaped in the dark. Some arrived with fists raised, some arrived with eyes too broken to cry. But all of them stayed, and none of them left the same. Clara never turned one away, not once. And slowly something larger began to grow. A family that didn't ask where you came from, only who you were becoming. Spring came shy that year. The tree on the hill, the one they planted after the mine, was the first to notice. Its thin branches, bare all winter, suddenly bore white blossoms. Fragile things, brave things. Theo saw them first. He burst through the cabin door, barefoot, face smeared with mud and joy. "It's blooming," he shouted. "Real flowers." Clara dropped her tin of flour. Elliot stepped out onto the porch, eyes squinting toward the hill. Nolan followed, wiping his hands on a ragwood shaving still clinging to his sleeves. The sapling stood just past the ridge, covered in soft white, delicate, but alive. Tougher than it looked, like all of them. They knelt beside it. Elliot reached up, brushed a blossom between calloused fingers. "Told you it'd grow," he said. "You said it would die in the first freeze," Nolan replied. "Shut up," Clara laughed. It was full, deep, unexpected, the kind of laugh that comes only after you've cried enough to earn it. The cabin had changed too. Walls repainted. A new window added. 2 extra cots squeezed in near the hearth. More boots lined the wall. More voices echoed down the hallway, yelling, laughing, bickering over chores. One evening, a quiet boy named Jonas tugged Clara's sleeve. "Are you my real family now?" he asked. She didn't blink. "We're your true family." And that was better than blood. The name spread. People began calling the house the Hensley Light, a place where lost boys found their second name, not the one they were given, but the one they earned. They etched it into the beam above the door, not carved with knives, painted with steady hands. Home. But even light has shadows. One night, a letter arrived, folded neat, no name. "You stole them. That won't be forgotten." Clara burned it in the fire, didn't mention it to the boys, didn't need to. Weeks later, a goat was found dead near the coop, neck snapped, no tracks, no signs of animal. Nolan buried it quietly. Elliot stood a little closer to the window that night, and when Theo asked if the tree would lose its petals, Clara said, only if something cruel tries to stop it. On Elliot's birthday, the sky turned black with storm. They lit every candle in the house. Theo gave him a wooden whistle, Nolan a hand-stitched pouch for tools, Clara a coat thick dark wool. It had belonged to her husband once. "I can't take this," Elliot said. "You already have," she replied. He wore it the next morning, didn't say a word. That was the day the yellow-eyed dog showed up. It stood just beyond the tree-line ribs, visible through mangy fur, watching the house. "Dog," Theo whispered. Elliot stepped outside. "Don't," Clara called through the glass. But he didn't stop. The dog ran, and behind it a gunshot cracked through the woods. Then 3 more. The message was clear. "We see you." They didn't sleep that night. Elliot kept the rifle in his lap. Nolan locked the barn. Clara stood by the window until the fire died. "They'll come," Elliot said. "Yes," she whispered, "but so will we." When she left again, she didn't tell them where. She took the back trail, rode east, carried a map and 2 letters sealed in oilskin. But she never made it to the ridge. Riders cut her off at the creek bend, faces wrapped in scarves, guns drawn. "You think you're some savior," one said. She didn't answer, didn't flinch. They struck her down, dragged her east, left her horse bleeding into red clay. This time the boys didn't wait. Elliot found the blood, the hoof prints, the scarf torn on the brush. "We go now," he said. He led them up the ridge, further than before. Nolan carried the rope, Theo a sling and 3 stones. No one cried. No one asked if she'd come back. They just went. They found the cabin buried in pine and rot smoke curling from a crooked chimney. A scarf nailed to the porch post, red ripped hers. Elliot pushed the door open. Clara was inside, tied to the frame, eyes, swollen hands, raw but alive. "I knew you'd come," she said. He cut her free. She leaned heavy on his shoulder. "We have to run," she said. "There's more." They ran down through the ravine into the mine shaft again. This time they knew the corners, the weapons, the darkness. This time they were the shadows. The men came fast, too fast, but not faster than the trap. Dynamite in the shaft. A single shot from Nolan, a clean one from Clara. A 3rd man begged for mercy. She took his weapon. "You tell them," she said. "We're not waiting in the dark anymore." They walked out at dawn. This time the tree was still blooming, and this time everyone saw it. Years later the tree still stood, taller now, stronger. They placed a stone at its base, for the ones who never made it, and the ones who did. Inside the house was full, not just of boys, but of men who had once been boys, returning with books, letters, stories of the lives they'd built, families, farms, fire in their eyes. They came back with daughters and sons of their own. They pointed to the beam above the door and whispered, "That's where I became me." One day, Theo handed her a paper. Just 1 word written in charcoal. Clara. She didn't hide her tears, didn't wipe them away, let them fall warm and deserved. Because she hadn't saved them. They had saved her too. And that was the real story. Not just of a house in the hills, but of a light that stayed lit long after the winds tried to blow it out. The story of Clara Hensley and the boys offers profound lessons about compassion, resilience, and the power of chosen family. It teaches us that kindness, though costly, can transform lives, as Clara's selfless act of saving 3 orphaned boys from a cruel fate creates a ripple effect of hope and healing. Their journey highlights the strength found in unity, showing how trust and mutual support can overcome even the darkest challenges. The narrative underscores the importance of standing up against injustice as Clara and the boys confront threats with courage and determination. It reminds us that true family isn't defined by blood, but by love, loyalty, and shared struggles as seen in the creation of the Hensley Light, a beacon for the lost. Above all, the story inspires us to act with empathy and to nurture hope no matter how bleak the circumstances. Let this tale move you to reflect on the impact of kindness in your own life. Like, share, subscribe, and comment below to share your thoughts on this powerful story and help spread its message of hope and resilience.